Welcome back to the latest episode of the Flex Success podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit. As always, we will be your co-hosts. I'm Lizzie, and this is Dean.
Now, if you find value in this episode, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below on YouTube. Share us with your friends, give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app, and if you want to take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram, just do that by putting in @flex_success.
And while you're on Instagram, you can check out everything we offer, from our ebooks to courses and programs. You can book a consultation or inquire about coaching via the link in our bio, or you can do that on our website.
Enjoy the episode.
George, it's so good to have you back. Welcome.
Absolute pleasure, guys. As always, how have you been, Croatia?
Oh,
Has he made it to that level now where we can just say George and everyone knows who he is?
Flex Success Coach George, the king of all Georges, obviously, guys, as if you didn't know that. We have something for you, George. That is a crowd of people applauding you. It is my new soundboard that entered the podcast on the last episode that got released. So this is the second one. I can also do this to you.
That's going to be applicable.
I've got drum rolls. I still don't have a fart sound, but it's coming.
Thank the Lord.
Oh my.
So prepare yourself for the soundboard.
Jesus Christ.
You've been warned.
It's a risky little tool for Liz to have. I mentioned this on the last podcast we did, that I'm equally nervous and excited by its implementation. But yeah.
Enough about me.
For anyone that's watching on YouTube, did you just notice that I'm in this video twice?
Oh, you can see the mirror in the background.
You see me dance in the background.
Give us a back double bye.
Imagine if I wasn't wearing imagine if I was wearing backless chaps.
Could you imagine?
And for those that are there, I just did this. Went forward and showed the mirror.
At least you're not as lean as you were on stage. We'd see straight through the hole.
This is true.
What do they call it? A cat butt or something?
Oh.
Because you know how,
Yeah.
so what, for people that aren't aware of how extremely lean preppers get, they get so lean that when they're standing up, you can just see their butthole because there's not enough butt fat to cover it. So it's called a cat butt, isn't it? Because cats always have their buttholes showing when they walk up.
I mean, even to this day, it still surprises me just how much fat you have between your bum cheeks. It's not until you remove that fat that you go, wow, there's a lot there.
I love where this podcast is going.
It's very rare that people actually get in that condition as well. Just to know, that's not something people are common to see nowadays.
So you're trying to tell me it's not common to see a man's asshole as he's standing there? Is that what you're trying to say?
It depends what you do on a Saturday night. I mean, it might be very common or normal.
You know what? This is an awesome accidental kind of segue into what we wanted to talk about today, which is buttholes. No, not buttholes, but managing symptoms of getting redonkulously lean. I believe redonkulous is the scientific term. Obviously, it can be for comp preppers, but it could just be for your average everyday person that wants to push the limits for whatever reason. So what an excellent segue, isn't it?
I mean, sure.
Transition so smooth.
Speaking of getting really lean, I believe you are in comp prep right now.
I am 6.5 weeks out. So just kind of getting to the nitty gritty stage, just starting to really feel it now. I can't complain. Up until this point, it's been probably the best prep I've ever had. You know, dietary fatigue, training fatigue, mental fatigue, everything's been more or less very manageable until sort of this week, where I'm starting to get a few more of them bad days creeping across the week. Like the ratio of good to bad is just starting to skew slightly. But hey, 6 weeks out, I'm not complaining. I'm used to feeling like this from 12 weeks out. So
okay, what's different this time around?
Proper periodization and timeline. That is the definitive thing when people ask me is what's been different. I've taken nearly 30 weeks to get ready for this show. It's been long, slow. I've actually not needed diet breaks. I mean, I've had 2 training deloads just because they're planned in with our training block setup, but no diet breaks yet. Just been cruising in really nice, low and slow. No direct cardio, just managing step count. It's been it ties in quite nicely to our topic of conversation where it's just removing as much fatigue as possible. You know, I've only got the necessary to get me to where I am.
Yeah, it's a concept that the old school mentality of bodybuilding or even extreme dieting in any case, where you should theoretically be suffering more in order to achieve the result.
When no pain, no gain.
Yeah, but we want to do as little as humanly possible to get as maximum as we can, so that when we have to go full throttle, it's still available to us.
There's room to move.
Still got the leverage there to do so at the end.
Yeah, it's that weird concept of feeling like you're being somewhat lazy.
Yes.
By not struggling more or doing more, or
yeah, you know what? I've started clients in the past and they're like, hey, look, I know I'm doing what I'm meant to do, but this is feeling easy and I really want to be hungry. I want to feel like I'm working for this. I kind of get it, but at the same time, I'm like, there's going to come a time where it's going to hurt if people get lean enough. And you want the opposite. So like pain will come eventually if you get to that point, but why someone would want to feel pain? Like, wouldn't we want to get the results with the least work possible? I don't know. It doesn't.
You would think. I think it's the same concept of like, if you change one aspect, people feel like they haven't changed enough to get the result. Whereas sometimes, I think it's actually, let me flip into this and do a nutrition one, because I think we're going to talk about nutrition first anyway. I think the success of something like keto, which is all fat, no carbs, is that it drops people out of their behaviors that were previously not serving them well for their current physique because they're trying to change it. So they're like, whoa, this is all different. And they get a lot of motivation extrinsically. They get the results, which gives them some more feedback. And then eventually, obviously, we know they shit the bed because it's not a sustainable approach. But yeah, it's that lack of deviation from what they think they need to do.
Okay, so you're saying that you think people want like overnight lifestyle revolutions instead of actually taking the time and having the patience and trust to make more like small evolutions in their lifestyle.
Yeah, because they feel like it's necessary. And they don't understand the concept of sustainability.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stigma around dieting and diet culture anyway, where we're constantly told from like a young age that dieting sucks. Like losing body fat or getting in shape sucks.
So
it's
hard,
not it's always drilled into us. Even like you look back at like the Weight Watchers days, like those weird little food camps of people that help people get in shape. Quite economous. And you see that mental transition with people that have never been coached before, not coached correctly, or in a setup for them. And it's so foreign and weird to them, they can't change their way of thinking because it's a decade or longer of thinking this is exactly how it has to be. In bodybuilders, we see it with the Dorian mentality, like you said, of wanting to suffer all the time. It's just illogical. Like it's almost like a pride thing, like they want to suffer. I don't know if that kind of tells me they've got a little bit of like a mental psychological thing that we need to work on here first, maybe. But
it could mean that maybe they're doing it to punish themselves. Perhaps, and like part of punishment is feeling, because I know that I used to have a really poor relationship with food and exercise. And if I had a weekend of binging, which, a decade ago I used to do, I would go to the gym to punish myself for having the binge. Like I've been so bad. And I wasn't necessarily going to the gym to make strength progressions or to like celebrate my body or to balance my health or anything like that. I was doing it to inflict pain on myself because I'd been bad. So maybe that's what people are doing with the dieting.
Yeah. We've had this conversation years ago too, Liz, about how you think like in order for somebody to be at the very top of their game, they likely have some form of pain in their previous life to motivate them to do better.
Right. Yeah. So
and like it's very rare. I think like usually at the top of the game of anything, let's just say even at the top of the game of series, somebody has the capacity to diet down to extremely low body fat. There's usually two people that are super successful at it. One, that people are doing it because they've suffered in the past, and this is a way for them to find some form of value and whatever in their life. And the other ones are the genetic elite, because they get there because they're genetically elite. It's very uncommon to find like just a normal everyday person who's willing to suffer for the sake of suffering to then get to these levels. So it's a chicken or the egg thing maybe too.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. So tell us, George, do you say you wanted to start with nutrition?
Yeah.
If we wanted to open this can of worms and help people understand how they might want to manage dieting symptoms, which is like extreme hunger, high fatigue, maybe shitty sleep, we can categorize that into, training, maybe meal timing, or all the subcategories that come under nutrition. Talk us through how you manage your dieting symptoms as you get super lean, if we want to open the lid of the nutrition basket.
So if we look at it from like the larger scale first, I think the best way you can give yourself as much hope as possible to kind of avoid these symptoms is setting up enough time to get in shape. Don't rush to try and make this a 12, 14, 16-week process. Give yourself an adequate amount of time. The longer, the lower, the slower. Arguably, the less likely you're going to run into these aggressive symptoms quickly. And it can allow you to kind of pre-plan adjustments in your timeline of say, right, we're going to push for the deficit in this 6 to 8 week block maybe, and then we're going to try and program in a diet break here to offset some fatigue, bring you back to maintenance, and look at the timeline from a longer perspective before you start honing in on those acute dietary fatigue symptoms. So you're just allowing yourself to have windows of time where you're not under so much stress, not under so much hunger. You can give yourself some of like a mental break and enjoy some social situations with that time frame of more food as well. But that's like the first port of call really, is making sure you set up your timeline appropriately to kind of offset as much of the potential to have these harsh degrees of dietary fatigue as possible. It is inevitable the leaner you get that you are going to get these symptoms, that you can't avoid them completely, but you can limit the time that you're going to experience them massively just by taking enough time to actually get in shape as opposed to rushing.
Yeah. I mean, devil's advocate would say that the faster the better, because then you don't have to diet for as long. But that mentality isn't necessarily wrong, but the restrictions are far greater the faster you want results. And often they're just not sustainable, and people go from on a diet to off a diet. The way you're talking about is more making it more manageable, so that it's not like we're being aggressive with aggressive symptoms and then we're off a diet. It's
I think that when people say that, like, I get it too. Like, why would you diet for 20 weeks when you can diet for 12 and just go a bit harder? Like, isn't that potentially better?
Yeah, wouldn't you rather save for a house in 2 years rather than 20? Like, yeah, but you have to like fucking scrape.
Well, let's say it's a reductionist sort of point of view, in that they're saying, well, they only associate one negative, being time, as being the thing that they're trying to mitigate there, as opposed to, okay, well, yeah, how well can you save? Can you still live a life and save for that house? Or can we still perform at an optimal level to maintain as much muscle as possible and still live your life and whatnot?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of other smaller variables that maybe they don't understand or don't know about in doing that aggressive deficit or doing that aggressive fat loss, that are going to lead to issues, not just from the mental side of things of, creating a tendency for poor relationship with food, or just for you've had to suffer so hard, you're then most likely to rebound out of that in a really poor manner, gain a lot more body fat and undo potentially all that hard work. But also there's a lot of physiological adaptations, like if we're talking about natural individuals, your thyroid adaptation, that's going to be a huge benefactor there. If you do like on a really aggressive mini cut, hormonal modifiers, your sexual hormone production, specifically more so in females than males. There's a lot of other implications and negatives that come from pushing really aggressively. Like, yeah, you'll get to your goal faster. And if you've got the mental willpower to do so, then kudos to you. Like, great. But are you really factoring in all these other potential issues you're going to now face once you come out the back end of that? And how do you know how to mitigate them correctly?
Yeah.
There's also no time in a short fat loss to really discuss how to get out of it either, because it's just in, get it done, get out, and then the get out phase is usually done just as erratically or as intensely.
Yeah, I guess it's like trying to straighten deck chairs on the Titanic. Like, it's really short-term way of thinking. We need to think more than 2 months from now. What happens in 6 months? What happens in 12 months?
Yeah. To put some quick numbers on this, just so people, because it's all well and good to say like make your dieting phase longer or long enough. I recently held a little workshop for SDC Fit on contest prep and whatnot. And there was a part on there where I did about setting up the appropriate timeline. And as a reference point, the timeline that we started with, an individual who had to lose 9 kilos of fat, can be done in 12 weeks relatively, like comfortably, safely, if they were about 90 kilos, because it's about 1% per week of their body weight being lost per week. But by the time that we accounted for all of the things you mentioned before, George, it was a 24-week prep. So basically doubled. And that was because we wanted time to not diet. We wanted time to deload. We wanted to account for the potential for like mistakes, slowing down, metabolic adaptations that we're not aware of that are going to occur until they occur.
Neat reductions.
Yeah. Fucking having a meal at Christmas or whatever it may be,
Yeah,
it was double the time.
Hey, for people who, just like a super quick description of, because you mentioned refeeds, maybe one of you two can talk us through what a refeed is. But before we get there, I'll set it up like this. Refeed is part of an umbrella term called intermittent dieting. Like, let's say someone wants to lose 10 kilos. This means they would be in an intentional weight loss phase for a period of time, maybe, 3 weeks. And then they would take a break from that, then go back and take a break from that, then go back to fat loss and take. So they intermittently dieting, maintaining. Whereas continuous dieting would mean you're always in an intentional weight loss phase. You remain in a deficit until you reach your goal. So a refeed is one way to do intermittent dieting. Go. What's a refeed? George.
Oh, the refeed is essentially a window of time where you're increasing your caloric intake to offset potential negative adaptations, maybe physiological reasons or mental reasons. It is essentially just a time where you increase your food, you're eating more food, you're not then in the hypercaloric state, you're not in a calorie deficit, and you're not burning fat, but you're also not gaining fat. The idea is to get yourself to a baseline so that you can offset those negative adaptations and get some kind of a physiological baseline back in, get rid of some fatigue, wash off some stress, ready to then set yourself up for the next block ahead. The timeline of the refeed can vary from a single day refeed, like a 24-hour refeed, all the way up to a 7 to 10 day refeed. Again, that's specific to your timeline. You know, how much time do you have to play with? How much time do you have to utilize this? How close are you to the goal? Maybe in sort of the back end of a prep, or maybe the back end of a holiday prep for a lifestyle client. You might not have the time frame to pull off the body fat you need to implement a 7 to 10 day diet break. So maybe just implementing a 1 or 2 day refeed on the weekend could suffice enough of an offset of fatigue adaptation there to continue and through into the goal.
Yeah, awesome. Refeeds and diet breaks and cheat meals and recovery diets and reverse diets are all discussed in the macro tracking course. You can find that in the link in bio if anyone's interested. And I talk about the difference between a refeed and cheat meals, and they are very different. Would either of you like to talk us through the differences, or I can?
Well, I mean, you can. You wrote the content.
That's
so
right.
Let's do it best. Oh, for me, just as a quick reference, because I think we just brushed the diet break very quickly there. Typically, the refeed is somewhere between that 1 and 5, 1 and 3 days. And technically speaking, I think a diet break is associated with a 7-day period spent back at calorie maintenance. For me, in a prep or clients of mine, I call it a diet break anywhere beyond 3 days, because typically that's when the psychological fatigue and all that is washed off by day 3.
Okay.
So I will say your diet break, or extended refeed.
Okay. I call a diet break if it's a week or longer.
Yeah, and that's technically correct. That is
refeeds and diet breaks are the same thing. It's just one's longer. Yeah.
I just don't want to give my client the forecast of, hey, diet break's coming here, and they think they're getting 7 days.
Right.
For me, it always says, now I've just started writing elongated refeed phase.
Right.
Or
elongated
extended refeed phase or something like that,
Semantics.
But yeah, the major difference here is that a refeed and or diet break is calculated, it's measured, it's back to calorie maintenance, controlled. It's not an opportunity just to eat whatever you want without conscious thought. Whereas a cheat meal is typically associated with eating foods that people haven't consumed in a long period of time. They're typically high fat, high carb, highly palatable, sometimes done subconscious in regards to the fact that they're not mindfully eating, is probably a more appropriate term. And there's sometimes an inability to switch off their eating capacity in a cheat meal, versus a refeed is, again, controlled, measured.
Cheat meals look a lot like binges.
Absolutely.
And there's always this mindset when someone does a cheat meal that food is good or bad. And we eat good food when we're dieting and bad food when we're cheating. And it really sets up a poor foundation for balance and a good relationship with food. And it's not that we can never eat. I'm avoiding like the plague saying bad food. Like, it's not that we should never be eating foods that are low in nutrients that clean eaters would consider bad food. It's that when we do, we make sure that it fits within our targets. We make sure we consume it in moderation with mindfulness at a time that's appropriate. Maybe we don't want to eat chocolate when we're starving. Maybe we want to have it when we have a craving, and we eat food that fills us up, that helps us reach our goals when we're starving.
Yeah, or in the absence of other humans and communication, I think, is another good one for people. The cheat meal mentality is to sit there and smash food.
Right.
Like the cheat meal is about the food. The refeed or the diet break is about the ecosystem, as far as I'm concerned.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, and also I discussed free meals as one of the bonus lessons in the macro tracking course. And the idea there is like there's a little bit of overlap between cheat meals in the sense that it's not a fully tracked meal, but it's very different in the sense that free meals are still mindful. They're still like sensible choices, sensible portions. We want to be sharing them with people so that we can like maintain our social relationships.
Yeah. I often spruik that as like an enjoyable meal in the absence of gluttony.
Oh, I like it. Don't eat like an asshole, maybe.
I do some say gluttonous pig. It depends who I'm talking to.
Maybe don't
if I was talking to George, I'd be like, don't be a gluttonous pig. If I'm talking to somebody I've got a little bit less of a relationship, not really sure what their psyche's like, I'm like, hey.
Do you think that's why I'm like Vegemite? You either hate me or love me, because I would say don't eat like an asshole to anyone.
Everybody loves Vegemite.
They don't. I hate Vegemite. Do you like Vegemite, George?
I'm guessing English would be Marmite. I'm guessing that's what you
I
get.
think Marmite might be from New Zealand.
I don't know, but yeah, that's similar enough. Do you like it?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's yeast extract.
Team hate.
Or Bovril. It doesn't matter.
What is it?
There's another one called Bovril or Bovril. It was the original, I think.
Oh, was it?
Which actually made for the purpose of stock creation.
Right.
And then Vegemite is a spreadable yeast extract.
It's disgusting. I don't know how anyone deals with it, honestly. It's when Dean eats it, I was like, you can wait a week before you kiss me because that's fucking
literally sour. Zoe does the same thing. If she ever has it on toast, I'm steering clear of her for the whole day. I don't want to know.
I'd rather kiss garlic breath, honestly. Maybe because I'm the one with the garlic breath.
I'd rather garlic breath, though. At least that smells nice.
Yes.
Doesn't even brush your teeth. Like the smell's in the breath. It's not even in the mouth.
So bad. So bad. Anyways, I've derailed us. So
let me pose this question to George and get back on track.
Is it about Vegemite?
No, it's not.
Unless
he wants to put it on toast during a refeed.
Okay.
Now, there will be some people that say that refeeds and diet breaks are pointless in that there's evidence to suggest now that we don't see sustained
hormonal adaptations
going back to normal. Fair. But why would somebody maybe benefit from these from a managing, the symptoms of extreme dieting perspective?
Well, it gives you a time window of not suffering from dietary stress, which is one of the main negatives of being in a calorie deficit. It sucks. It's hard to do. And implementing diet breaks or refeeds are a perfect way to give you that from a mental state. If we're saying that the data is now a little bit conflicting and that we're not seeing what we originally thought, at least that mental leverage for the client is going to offer them a huge positive that's going to help allow them to continue pushing on in their goal. Whereas if we said, the data doesn't support it, don't need them, there's a potential for the lack of adherence or for them to completely drop off the diet if you're pushing them too hard or too fast for that individual to cope. So I still think there's a plausible reason for them to gain a mental positive here in adherence, specifically more so than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the most recent study, ICECAP is the acronym, showed that dieters' moods had improved when they were intermittent dieters had better moods than continuous dieters.
Yeah.
And the original study, the Matador study, was done on just obese men. So it's not really the population of people that we're talking to here. But there were huge improvements between intermittent dieters and continuous dieters, not just I'm not necessarily talking about mood, but their ability to maintain the weight lost when they had breaks. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Like imagine going to the gym, you're there for an hour and you're doing chest press for the whole hour. Imagine the quality by the end. We need to take breaks between sets, and that's how I look at refeeds.
Yeah. Even the perception, I think, of the diet difficulty was improved in individuals that did an ICECAP as well. The other thing we have to realize too is even though ICECAP used athletes, they still weren't athletes in extreme levels of low body fat.
Right.
So when we still haven't got anything to say, like our cohort of individuals that we're talking about here, either contest prep athletes or people that are doing like extreme dieting phases, that we say, hey, we can definitely say these don't offer benefit for these reasons. Probably can for the physiological adaptations like thyroid and sex hormones and all that kind of stuff.
Sex, huh?
Yeah. But in regards to managing performance, managing diet fatigue, perception of difficulty, all of those things, even just from a feedback mechanism for me to see how somebody responds to carbohydrates from a look perspective,
As again, like training performance during the diet break or the refeed, the sessions you'll have in comparison to what you've just had while you're in a deficit are going to be far surpass what you've just been used to for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. Numbers will go back up. You'll feel your pumps again in the gym. Training will get back to some kind of a baseline. So I think there's still plenty of plausible reasons to include them, despite what data may not suggest. But even if you said to someone, hey, look, let's put you in a deficit take us 20 weeks to get to the goal, start to finish, let's go. Or we could take 30 weeks and you could do 4 weeks of dieting and have a diet break here and then do another 4 weeks, and the client will go 4 weeks of dieting or 20 weeks of dieting.
Yeah.
I think I know what looks a bit more adherable and more enjoyable and actually doable in the timeline here.
Yeah, I mean, I even personally found the re-entry into the deficit post a diet break fun and again motivating, because it's kind of like I'm glad I've done that, but I'm ready to go again. Can we start this?
It's like a refresh button.
Yeah, and there's always Joe like, one more day, motherfucker.
I can see people at the beginning of a dieting phase like super pumped about it. They're ready to go. They're really motivated. And I think it's a bad choice to make long-term decisions off temporary motivations or feelings, because when somebody starts that, they might get a couple of weeks and be like, oh, fuck. I wish I chose intermittent dieting. And you know what, honey, it's not too late. You can change your mind. So that's all right. Yeah. Okay.
That's the joys of refeeds. That's the joys of refeeds, though, is that you can auto-regulate them as and where appropriate. There's no, although we might plan to have diet breaks or plan refeeds here or there, they, as and when they're needed, you can auto-regulate them in anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can be, what's what I'm looking for, reactive with the diet breaks instead of proactive.
Yep.
Yeah. What are you? Are you reactive or proactive?
A little bit of both. I like to pre-plan ahead and then make conscious decisions on whether they're actually applicable at the time. So everyone's under the understanding that, hey, we've planned this in, but there's no guarantee you're going to take this diet break here. We'll see where you land prior, and then we'll make that decision on the, sort of the week leading in, see where your fatigue's at, see where you're feeling mentally before, suddenly doing it. Because I can use myself as an example on this prep. I've not had a single diet break since starting, although we planned to have 2, but because the dietary fatigue was just simply not there, and my management of the hunger fatigue has been much better than it has been in the past, they've just not been warranted. So I've just cruised through comfortably.
Awesome.
What are some of the strategies you found more beneficial for managing hunger, that being one of the symptoms?
So the non-orthodox one first, nicotine. This is not something I'm just broadcast. Everyone should use nicotine. No, not at all. Not everyone should start smoking cigarettes. Again, that's not the message I'm trying to send. But if you feel you have the willpower to cope with something that is highly an addictive substance, nicotine has shown fantastic efficacy to suppress appetite and also benefit you from a nootropics perspective. So it kind of kills 2 birds with one stone there. You're not just helping to offset dietary fatigue, but also mental fatigue from that nootropic stimulation. It's actually used, I think, currently at the moment in Alzheimer's and dementia studies in America. They're trialing it. So it has got plausible reason to be used, but remember, highly addictive substance. Arguably, you're not smoking anything, so is there degenerative health effects? It's still up for debate. The data on vaping isn't exactly concrete, but there are other means of using nicotine gum, nicotine lozenges, sprays, patches that could all offer some help. Now, the more orthodox ways of managing hunger and the normal ways people would look here. So meal timing is something that I've concreted in. Having routine, having habitable eating times, your body knows when it's time to eat. Your internal clock knows, hey, this is when we eat. I'm getting ready for that meal now. And you can offset having like hunger signals in between. If you'll, spend 3-4 weeks getting this concrete routine in place, your body comes into a habitual state where it knows, even if you might be actually physically hungry here, you can kind of offset it mentally because your meal time is here, here, and here, and that routine is concrete by that point. But trying to spread your meals out roughly on like an average of 2 to 3 hours per day. Obviously, you have to factor in your when you wake up and when you go to sleep, and kind of try and balance them out evenly as possible, so that you're not spending extended windows of time where you skipped a meal and now you're trying to make up food, and having 2 meals combined into one, having a larger influx of food is going to inevitably lead to you being hungrier later because of the expansion of the stomach and the amount of food volume you've consumed and that drop off afterwards. So meal timings is such a basic thing to do, but carries quite a lot of benefit here. And it's overlooked by a lot of people. People with busy lives, busy schedules often think, it's fine, I'll just eat when I can. But that could be one of the main ways you offset dietary fatigue there, just by with consistency in meal timings.
It's worth mentioning that although I totally agree meal timing is really important and something Dean and I have maintained even when we travel, it's what you're not saying, which is clear to me, but I just want to make it clear to all the listeners, that's meal timing is not what causes weight loss. You're saying that it just helps for hunger management. Yeah. Yes,
completely. It's not going to offer you any better plausible reason. Calories in, calories out across the day is the definitive factor for fat loss. Are you in a deficit or are you not? But just managing those meal timings is going to simply help you manage the hunger better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you found any benefit in yourself or in clients of yours with managing, say, the macronutrient distribution of each meal, like whether or not somebody has carbohydrates, protein and fats, or just protein and fats, or just protein and carbs, or whatever it may be?
So in the beginning of the day, my current setup is obviously PED related, but I sort of go with protein and fat meal as first meal of the day, being a little bit more cetaceous, a little bit slower digesting than carb sources. For me, that's a PED related adjustment in my nutrition setup. But the purpose of using proteins and fats in that one meal, they're obviously slower digesting, so they're going to offer more satiety, going to cause you to be fuller for longer. So if a client's total daily macros are on the decline here, you can maybe look at utilizing pulling away more carbohydrates and leaving fats and proteins a little bit higher there to increase satiety and increase fullness across the day.
Yeah. This is for sure one of the ones that I've seen one of the greatest amount of like individual variability in regards to how each person changes their preference for macro setups, and also a little bit of the meal timing. But mainly the meal timing comes down to whether or not they're having 3 meals or 5 meals. It's not significant, right? Like, and maybe smaller humans will have the 3 because we want them to get a sufficient protein serve, like small females at each meal, as opposed to grazing on 50 grams of meat each time.
Yeah.
But if some individuals find like, I would rather have like a larger carbohydrate meal once per day versus having 3 smaller ones and so on. And none of it really matters. That's the cool thing.
When it comes
to fat loss, what does matter is setting it up in a way that supports
that person's
preferences. With one small asterisk for people that are like getting into the real nitty gritty of fat loss, and they really want to try and offset muscle loss by driving some form of performance outcome, we may say that it's slightly advantageous to push or partition those carbohydrates around training, just to ensure recovery is a little bit better.
But those are details for the pointy end.
And there's something that you really probably going to be talking about.
That was going to be my caveat there, that just by reducing your carbohydrates and increasing protein fats may seem favorable from hunger, but you also have to factor in then training performance and how that may suffer if you do just remove them all entirely. We know keto diet people will understand how hard it is to train or maintain performance in that state.
Yeah, I refuse to have a smaller than 80 gram cream of rice. So every time, I mean, what's the point? Every time my carbs got reduced, I just decided like, all right, I'm just going 1 meal less carbs so that I could push more of it back into the cream of rice.
You loved your cream of rice. We don't have a microwave.
I still do. I just have,
no microwave or oven in this Airbnb that we're staying in.
Yeah.
No cream of rice for you.
Your potion, you can manage it to the right consistency with just hot water without a microwave. But it's so, if you go too far the other way, there's no saving it.
Oh, look, you know what? I've become pretty good at even making them on the stove. But the whey protein that I had when we first got here in Croatia was pretty dog shit. And I was like, it ain't worth it. Now I've got a decent one. So it'll be back in sometime soon. The other thing is sometimes finding rice flour in other languages is just too annoying.
Oh my God, it's so hard looking at supermarket products in Croatia. Oh my God. The letters, there is not enough vowels in the Croatian language. There's a J next to a Z, and then it goes to an S and then a T. It's like, how? Yeah. What? No.
Yeah. Like even when we didn't understand Portuguese in Portugal, some of the words make sense. So you're kind of like, I'm pretty sure that I know what that is.
Yeah. You know? I always think it's so strange, the variety. You all think most of these European countries' language will kind of come through from Latin at some point. How the hell we've got so much variance between them all? You'd think they'd be a little bit more similar.
Yeah. Actually, Portuguese made me laugh a lot because
don't offend Portuguese people now.
No, I'm not going to. I don't know, maybe you'll be offended. That's okay. That's on you. They were colonized by the Spanish for 60 years, and obviously with colonization, they're forced to speak the colonizers' language. And so when they were made independent, they didn't want to speak Spanish anymore, so they changed the language. And by change, I mean like they slightly pronounce the word a little bit differently and they call it a different language. And like I understand some Spanish words and absolutely no Portuguese, except for like please and thank you and pastel de nata, which is Portuguese tart. But I still feel like the way they pronounce things, can't understand it. But in writing, I'm like, oh, that's 1 letter different to the Spanish word. I know what that is.
Yeah.
Wow, Portuguese, you really changed it so much. Good for you.
Sort of petty change.
Yeah, because there was some of them, it was literally a letter.
Yeah, it's a letter.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
A letter, but a completely different pronunciation. You're like, you can't do that.
But going back to our topic, what were some things that you found helpful for diet fatigue when you were prepping for your show that you came first in your category? Hey?
For me, I personally note that it's typically better to have a slightly larger meal less frequently. Like I would rather have 5 larger meals than 6 smaller meals.
Okay.
More frequently. Like there's a range for me. Like like towards a certain period, like that 3 hour mark. Like if I'm having to eat like longer than that and not that fun, if I'm having to eat short of that, but eat really small meals, I kind of just finish the meal and I'm like, I'm not satisfied enough.
You're still hungry.
Unless I was driving volume through the roof, but then there comes a point in time where you just have to deal with it. Yeah. But this is a difficult one for people to implement, but my best strategy for managing hunger was honestly to just reframe how I thought about what hunger was.
Okay.
Most people associate hunger with negativity.
Yeah.
I associated it with something that helped me achieve the goal that I was trying to achieve. So every time I was hungry, I was like, good, I should be, you know?
Yeah.
And then,
That's that was one of my next points to roll on to, was reframing your viewpoint of what actually being hungry means. I got this one from Austin Stout in America, one of who does the podcast with Joe, and he drilled it into himself so much that horrible, awful, gut-wrenching feeling of hunger was actually a really good thing. It meant fat was leaving. By some ulterior motive to the goal, the hungrier you're getting, the leaner you're getting. In days when you feel awful when you're in a diet, you're going to wake up probably the best you've ever looked, chances are. So it kind of ties in quite nicely with the worse you're feeling, the more hunger you're suffering, the leaner you're kind of getting. So having that twist on it, that this is intuitive to the goal and this is necessary to some extent to get to the goal, is a great way of kind of taking away that negative connotation to the feeling. And eventually it's not something that happens. You just go, oh, it's a positive thing. Great. Yeah, I like being hungry. It doesn't happen like that. But over time, you almost learn to ignore it because you've got such a positive outlook on it now.
You learn to live with it. But that's not to say that he would be chasing feeling that way. It's just that when you eventually can't avoid it any longer.
Yeah, unless you're a sadist like Brandon Kempter.
Oh, he loves it, doesn't he?
He told a story on ours. I'll refer to it very quickly for those in that. He got to the end of his prep. His condition was done. It was time to start adding food back in.
He's nutty.
To pull fatigue back, right? So he's like, cool, I've made the condition I need, time to pull the fatigue back, lessen the deficit. But as he started to lessen the deficit, he started adding food back in. He started to feel less hungry. And he was like, this isn't right. So he started going
Was he still prepping?
Still prepping. Okay. He started removing voluminous foods and implementing things that were a little bit more calorie dense so that he didn't feel like he was full, because he felt like he was going against the diet.
He wanted to feel the pain.
Yeah, this is actually, this goes alongside the mental concept of, or idea of reframing too, is that I stopped chasing extreme fullness a while back, but definitely in this last prep, because I also associated that with being overfull, overfed, not like in control of even just stomach control and stuff like that. I didn't like it. So I never really chased fullness, because to me then fullness was like almost a negative, in that I felt like I'd overconsumed, or that I couldn't keep control of my stomach from an aesthetics perspective. So that also helped me not chase crazy volumes.
Okay. All right.
One other one for me, and then just some little tidbits. People have probably heard these before, like eating with small spoons, putting the spoon down every time I took a mouthful, as opposed to putting 3 or 4 mouthfuls in one after the other.
Like mindfulness practices.
Yeah. And another one I've actually even noticed now, because I'm no longer like super hungry or anything, but I still would like to eat more food. I also decreased the size of my mouth.
We're laughing at George here because George like uses a shovel instead of a teaspoon, and he's like, what? I have a big mouth. I'm like, bro, look at this. Look at how much food is on your spoon. It's not a big mouth.
It never feels like unfathomable. It never feels like I can't chew.
You don't chipmunk face. You know?
Man.
The other one there was, I actually found enjoyment in eating some of my food cold. Because when I would heat it up, it would make it taste extra delicious. It's like spice. There's a fine line. Some spice will enhance flavor. Too much spice will decrease flavor. And it's the same with temperature. Like really hot coffee, Liz, shit coffee. But like a little bit below boiling into the 80-degree range, perfect coffee.
But you didn't want... Huh?
Got to let the kettle settle down off the boil first.
You have to drink it straight out of the kettle.
I need to get that on a t-shirt. Let the kettle settle.
Hey, that needs to be a hashtag.
Nice.
But Dean, you're saying that you prefer to eat your food cold because that's not your preference.
Because it's less flavoursome.
Yeah. And you don't want your food to be so delicious that it's hard to stop. You want to finish the meal being like, yeah, that was enough.
Yeah, like everybody knows that hot rice tastes better than cold rice, because cold rice goes a little hard again.
Yeah.
So I would sometimes have my rice meals cold.
Is this a face of disagreement, George? Do you like?
Yeah, see, Now, this is coming from previous preps. I used to prep whilst I was working on site and construction. So all my food was cold. And I built up this love for cold rice, cold chicken, rice and vegetables. And it's still something I'll do now, is I'll cook my food hot and I'll let it go cold before I eat it, because I just love the taste. I don't know why. Maybe I'm strange.
No, there is. So like, I preferred my beetroot rice chicken meal with cold. But I would actually, if I had to really choose, I'd rather have fresh rice and then cold beetroot on top.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know?
Well, I feel impartial about all cold food. And I think for the same reason, I spent so long bringing all my food to uni. Like, I didn't have a microwave. I think there's probably microwaves on campuses now, but this is when the dinosaurs were around. I was at uni. And so because I ate my food cold out of containers, I just I don't know, do you want to heat it up? Do you want to not heat it up? I like it the same, but rice, I'm going to say warm's better.
Yeah, I think, again, like, this is, we're probably talking to our own bias here, though, and that we've all done it a fair few times. I think if you spoke to the majority of people who've eaten a hot pasta dish versus a cold pasta dish, typically the hot one is nicer. Not to say that the cold one isn't nice. It is, and that's the point. You still want to enjoy it. It's just something that I've noticed that
because there's personal preference. Figure out when you're really hungry what you like a bit less, but you're not going to gag on it. And that is a good hunger management strategy.
Yeah, or is salt and pepper enough? Yes. Does salt, pepper, and mustard taste better? Probably, but do we really need to put mustard on every dish?
Ties back to a post you did, Liz, on Instagram about not making every meal a party. I think this is really important in a deficit. There are times that you have to be quite intuitive in the situation. There are times where putting a little bit more effort into your food is going to make it more favorable, and you're going to enjoy the meal, take more time. It's going to give you some kind of positive benefit here. But if all your food is like a la carte 5-star meal looking, it's going to make dieting a lot harder. And on the flip side to that, you don't just want to be eating plain chicken and boiled rice every day, because it's going to suck and you're not going to want to eat. You're going to want to eat other foods, and that tendency to binge is going to increase or cheat on the diet. So you've got to kind of find your middle ground. Like, I find a 70-30% mix is kind of nice. So I've got my kind of plain bodybuilding meals that are just, I know that they're fuel. It's a fuel source that does the job. And then 1 or 2 meals at the end of the day when I have more time, like my cream of rice, I might put a little bit more effort into it. So I look forward to that meal to close off the day's dieting.
Yeah, he makes cream of rice cakes now, this guy.
Cream of rice cakes?
That's the change, you see. That's a prep change.
Oh, you're going to need to
hang on a minute. What if I take this cream of rice and turn it upside down? That'll be better.
The amount of people that message me like, how have you done this? I'm like, bro, I literally just cooked cream of rice and just turned it upside down and took it out the top.
I knew that. I knew that. I was just like, this is a presentation trick.
Oh, I love this so much.
But it changes the meal so much.
Yeah. That's it. I did. I put up one the other day too and said core cake and showed the consistency of it. And they're like, man, how did you do this? I'm like, I let it set for 3 hours. I packed it in my bag and ate it later.
Oh, you guys are geniuses. I love it.
Funny.
I love it.
All right, so we've done meal timing. We've done palatability. Size of meals has been briefly or roughly, or whatever which one you want to put it together.
Briefly mentioned.
Briefly and roughly.
Yep.
We've done stims. We can probably sub in some caffeine as well, potentially in between meals to offset some hunger, just like you've done with nicotine. Refeeds diet breaks.
Yeah, but you don't want to start with all of these things, right? It's like as things get really difficult and you need to pull out another tool, then whip it out.
Yeah. I also think it's important to have a conversation and set boundaries on what your starting point is and what your level of, I suppose, like extension on that is, or like what your maximum sort of tolerable amount you're willing to accept is. Like nicotine, like if I'm going to use gum, am I going to cap myself at 4 milligrams a day or 2 milligrams a day, or whatever it may be, because it can quickly get out of hand.
Yeah. I had a friend years ago, Shuni, and she decided that chewing gum helped her not snack in the office between meals. And she was like, do you think that's a problem? I was like, no, like if you're chewing some gum between like breakfast and lunch, it's fine. And she had these jaw problems and she started getting bloated. I was like, oh, what's happening? And I was talking to her about it. She ended up putting a whole packet of gum in her mouth at one time. And she had this big ball of like sugar-free, which was giving her not just the chewing, the fact that her stomach was getting ready for food. and no food was actually arriving, but also all of the artificial sweeteners at such a high dose all the time was making her shit herself. Like, just because one piece of gum is fine doesn't mean a whole packet at the time. Like, just because a bit of nicotine is okay, like, let's not go crazy.
Yeah.
The gum one's a perfect example of this, because you can easily start titrating up through. It's in between every single meal. All of a sudden, then it's before you eat your meal, when you wake up straight away, you're just yamming in the gum. Like, there is still calories in chewing gum. I know it's only small, it's only minor, but you have to weigh in. If you're going through like 3 or 4 packs a day, like, that is calories that are going to contribute to your deficit. So you've got to be careful with them hidden numbers there. Just because it says sugar-free doesn't mean it's completely fine. And like you said, chewing gum stimulates the brain's thought mechanism that food is coming. So your digestive enzymes get ready to receive food. So you're potentially going to increase hunger there, as opposed to neglect it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good asterisk for people that aren't aware. Sugar-free gum doesn't equal calorie-free. Sugar-free Slurpees or ice drinks doesn't mean calorie-free. And sugar-free syrups at coffee stations doesn't mean calorie-free.
Oh, actually, I talk about sugar-free, no added sugar, whatever products in the macro tracking course in the bonus lesson, Hidden Calories. And some people are smashing them, right? Because all of the sugar alcohol. So if you like Queen's no sugar maple syrup, even like the Peter's no sugar ice cream, those Gullens biscuits, the Double D lollies, the Aussie Bodies low carb bars, there's so many. So check out that lesson.
90% of food goods that are supposed to have sugar in them that then have a low sugar or no sugar tag on them have just had replaced with some other shit.
Yeah, it's funny because the people buying them are usually the calorie conscious ones, and they're the ones getting fucked. Yeah.
All right. Heaps of ways to manage extreme dieting symptoms there from a nutrition
perspective. Did want to talk about training as well, but I feel like time is getting on, and maybe we might make that a separate podcast. Is that okay?
I'm willing to have George back on.
Okay.
I think you can add a lot of more personal, in-depth context to the training side of things as well, if you give it a separate episode.
Yeah.
One more on the nutrition side of things, then if we can just caveat that.
Yeah.
Plate size matters. You can trick your brain into thinking you're eating more food by not putting it on such a big plate. Don't have so much white space or whatever color your plate is around it. Reduce the size down so that it looks like a big meal on top of a smaller plate or a bowl or something like that.
And don't use a shovel to put all of it in your mouth at one time.
Yeah, no ladles for utensils. I still eat with a small spoon now.
Efficiency is my game.
You're busy.
Can I just jump on George's side here and say it was in the peak of his off season at that stage. Getting food down was more of a challenge. So we actually inverted all of these things we're talking about and went, you know what? I'm going to shovel and swallow as opposed to small teaspoon and chew.
I love it.
Yeah, that's the excuse I'm going to use.
Let's go with that. Now, we like to wrap up every episode with a tip to help people be less shit. If you could summarize this, or just, you know what, it doesn't even have to be relevant. What would be one tip that you would give to the listeners on how to be less shit?
I wish I'd been more prepared for this one. Don't do drugs.
Didn't you just say do nicotine and caffeine?
The hypocrisy was the play on there. So I think my biggest tip, if we kind of relate it to what we've been talking about, is don't underestimate the time it takes for you to get in shape, and don't overestimate what you can do in a certain window of time.
I like it. Great tip. We also like to share something worth sharing with listeners as well.
I feel we should bunny hop it, given the macro course is just...
Okay.
I was literally just about to say a perfect example to slip.
I said bunny hop. I meant hijack.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if we bunny hopped it, we wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, let's not bunny hop it. Let's hijack it.
Right. Let's hop right back.
George, would you like to share that?
So we have now got a pro version of the macro tracking course available on the Flex Success website. It is fantastic. I have just started working my way through it now myself. How long until it's available to the public, Liz?
Now, it's available now.
Yeah.
The email threw me off. It said it wasn't.
Oh, yesterday I gave current students exclusive access, but it is now available. Yeah, perfect. If anyone wants to check it out. And by the time this episode gets released, which isn't today, it certainly will be. Yeah. We wanted to rejig it because the other one was great and we got awesome feedback, but it just could have been a little bit clearer. We wanted to open up a comment section so people could ask questions, which you now can. It's lifetime access. We cover a little bit more. We didn't talk about free meals in the other ones or give kitchen scale hacks and time-saving hacks and and all of that jazz.
Yeah, it's not like the logistical part of this is how you use a tracking application.
Right. No, there is the practical, but it's not only that.
But it's the questions that then people have, like, as they go on through it. Yeah, like, oh, like, but I'm going to go eat with my parents. Like, how do I do that?
How do I eat out and track?
Here are your 4 options, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, plenty of applications. Pretty cool.
Thanks for sharing that, George. That was a good one.
Great share, mate. Really good share.
All right. Now, soundboard is coming back out. Are you ready to introduce Hot Topic? I sung a song. I created a song to introduce this segment.
Yeah.
Have you heard it yet?
Have I not? I've been catching up with all the latest podcasts. Have I been missing it?
It's only in the very last one.
The very last episode that got released.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Ready?
New segment.
Hot to topic, hot to topic. Hot to topic, hot to topic. Hot to topic, hot to topic. Topic to topic to topic.
How good's my voice?
That was a vibe. Love it. Perfect.
Do you have the Wiggles in England?
The Wiggles?
Okay, that's a
That's
no.
No.
In Australia, I feel they are an Australian
As an
brand.
Australian, we thought that they were a global sensation.
I thought the Wiggles were global, honestly. My assistant, Kay, I was like, yeah, you know the hot potato song? I want to like read you. It's so hot, but they're a band for children. So there was like 4 dudes originally. Now I think there's 5 and there's a girl in there.
I do know that song. I know the hot potato song. I do know the hot potato
Hot
song.
potato, hot potato.
Yeah.
Theirs.
Isn't it the Wiggles song?
Well, I know they sing it, but I don't know if it's theirs.
Oh, I don't know. I thought it was a Wiggles original, maybe not.
Yeah.
So that is a twist on hot potato, but hot to topic, hot to topic.
Can we just a cliff note for people like too long didn't read who don't know who the Wiggles are? This is what it is in a nutshell. 4 to 5 grown men dressed in different coloured skivvies singing to children.
That's, yeah.
Not creepy at all.
Probably drive a white van and offer cans.
Sounds like a BBC court date. But,
Yeah. BBC, are we going to play on that?
No,
okay,
that's
just thought I'd throw that out there.
There's everything, every flavor in this podcast.
Can't believe you didn't applause my joke.
hey.
Amazing. I also have a slow clap on this soundboard.
We're not doing that yet. Hot topic. What is it today?
Okay. We are going to ask you, George, at Flex Success, as being a Flex Success coach, you know that we care for value. We don't just take people on, set their macros. It's not a 2-minute thing. We take time and attention. We know that the more clients we take on, the more time it takes us, which is fine because it's one-on-one coaching and that's the cost of it. What do you think of coaches that take on like 100 plus clients? Not only that boast about it. They're like, I currently have 130 on the books, only 10 spots left. Or boast about doing like, can you believe it? I'm so efficient. I just did 20 check-ins in an hour. What do you think?
I mean, it screams red flags to me. Like logically, in a day, you've got 24 hours. Now, most coaches are also potentially bodybuilders or people chasing some kind of physique goal. So they're going to want to factor in training, meal prep, their own social life alongside their work hours. So if you're handling 100 clients a week, say if you split them up nicely and you was doing somewhere around like 20 per day, 5 days of the week, that doesn't leave a lot of time in the day to do anything else bar that. That's if you're just 100% focusing on giving the actual attention to detail that is required of one-to-one coaching. So you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't train, you just exist to coach.
What about admin and like client calls?
Exactly. What about other consultations? What about paid consults? Like, no one is just doing that alone. They have all got other goals alongside it. They have a life to live. So it just seems unlogical, and it would just scream a big red flag to me that if someone says they've got 100 plus clients, surely you need to start asking, well, are they actually coaching these one-to-one as they should be, applying that correct attention to detail, or are they just kind of punching out like pre-programmed training programs, like the biscuit templates, and kind of giving everyone the same setup and diet? Like, there's a few questions you need to start asking. And if you're someone who's got a coach who's got maybe 100 plus clients, are you receiving the attention to detail you really need? Like, ask yourself, is the time your coach is giving you, is it really worth what you're paying here to achieve your goal? Are you seeing the results you want? Or maybe is this a problem that you see within their own setup? It's taken away from it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I wonder if some people are only getting 5 minutes from their coach and they feel like they're happy with that because the bar is set so low by so many people.
Well, this is the difficult thing, is like, what is your prior experience as a client with previous coaches? Like, if this coach's performance is lower than somebody else's, but better than their previous coach, they're still going to feel like they've got an upgrade. The problem I have with like the whole concept around coaches promoting the number of their clients over the quality of their client results more prevalently, especially on social media, is that the motivation's wrong. The motivation is, I have X amount of number, and number is associated with dollars.
Yes.
Therefore, I am successful. And like, for me, that motivation is non-existent. Like, I would much rather charge more and do less in regards to the numbers of clients, so I can have relationships and build.
You have more time to give to each person.
Yeah. Really enjoy my work than just be essentially going through an administration role every day. Like, cool, man, thanks for this. There you go. Cool, man, thanks for this. There you go. Like,
I think that's the big question when people ask about your pricing and stuff, and they see that it might be higher than the average of these people that are taking on 100 clients who are charging 50 quid per month because of that workload. There's a reason you see a relationship of cost being more with a coach who's going to give you more. That quality over quantity approach is there for a reason. And it's so that you can then apply, like you said, reduce your workload, but give more to these people, give them more value for the service they're receiving, which obviously would cost slightly more. But it is, like you said, on the difference between a client coming from a previous coach and then maybe thinking they're getting a level up just because there's one or two slight improvements on their past experience. I think that the level playing field we're in at the moment, it's not hard to separate yourself from the middle of the pack of what we see in the industry, just by actually caring, just by being a human being and caring about your job and wanting to do this for the right reasons, instantly puts you up into that upper epsilon of coaches.
Yeah.
And I think this is the difference between having a standard and having an expectation. So I think the expectation, people don't expect all that much because the quality is so low. And they think, oh, my clients are only expecting 2 minutes from me. But it's not necessarily about that. It's about your standards. And it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It doesn't matter how low everyone's expectations are. Your standards matter, and that shouldn't change, right? It's like if you're in the dating pool, you might expect a bunch of creeps, but that doesn't mean you settle for that, because your standards don't change regardless of your expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really recall any conversation with us, Liz, where we've kind of ever said like, all right, so how do we get more clients? We've always said like, how can we give more to the client?
Yeah, we've always had a cap.
And that's always incurred some level of a price increase over time, because we get better as coaches, therefore our value goes up, right? But the conversation has never been about how do we get more as a number, but rather how do we improve, get better, and therefore we become a premium service, you know?
It's funny, we were talking to a business coach a while ago, and he was like, cool. So what's the target? And we were like, oh, the target is to help people do this, this, and this. They're like, okay. So what's the target? I was like, to make it clearer to our clients what the instructions are. Okay, and he just kept referring to it. And we were like, yeah, these are, he's like, no, the money. We were like, oh, we hadn't even thought of that. Like, we need to pay the bills, of course. We're not a fucking charity. But that's not the overarching goal, you know, and that probably is for people who just take on more and more and more. And I think they shoot themselves in the foot, because eventually they get a shit name because clients aren't getting the results. They don't feel heard. They don't feel respected. They don't refer. And then all of a sudden it goes from all these clients eventually to not enough.
It's definitely a negative more so than a positive, because a lot of what I've seen in our industry, reputation and what you can offer as a coach is what's going to carry you in your career, not so much who you've worked with or what you've done as results. So you see the coaches that put their list as long as anything in their bio of top 3 placings, yada yada, X amount of IFBB pros. Like, that doesn't carry the weight as much as your reputation as a coach does. And when you are handling 100 clients per week, you will just get a bad name for yourself and a bad reputation. And it's so hard to build up a good reputation as a coach who cares about their clients and really is client centric. And it's very, very easy to lose that reputation as quick as anything, just from one bad review. It really can shatter a career. So they are massively shooting themselves in the foot in fleet of trying to attain, that money or materialistic things.
Yeah,
it sucks too, because the people that coaches like this usually put out on social are usually the bigger names. They attract the smaller fish. The fish pay the bills, but get the least service. while the big fish, or typically, you know, the predators, are really probably even maybe not paying or getting it cheaper, because they're the ones that bring it all
and
in.
getting an awesome service, right? So the coach can say, I'm coaching this athlete. How amazing.
Yeah, so the best service goes to the non-payer or the low payer, and the high payer gets the worst service, but the high payer is what's paying the whole system.
Because they don't have as much influence.
Really shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And coaches just shouldn't be playing favorites like that, because everyone, just because someone's more popular on social media or has won more titles doesn't make them any more or less important as a human being. And that's who we're working with. We're working with humans. We're not working with social media followings.
The other two, the best coach yesterday was just another coach until they got someone found them. Like they were doing the same thing yesterday as what they're doing the day after they became, you know, quote unquote famous.
Yeah.
Even to try and drive some motivation towards coaches that are getting caught up in the numbers game. I just thought of, as you mentioned this before, George, about reputation and all the rest of it, is that one of the benefits of being an unreal coach and caring about people and being client-centric, and let's just say, pick a number and say only dealing with 40, is that those 40 people will refer you, right? So if you lose one or two, doesn't matter, because you'll get a 1 or 2 referral. But if your business is solely controlled by promotional based stuff, ads, advertisements, and you're trying to get the numbers game, you're always going to have to spend money to try and leverage more money, and you'll probably end up worse off financially anyway. You know, and it's way more stressful. So.
Yeah. But maybe we should make the point that we're talking about one-on-one coaching here. There are some like fine group programs where you're not promised a one-on-one service, and that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're talking about supposed to be legitimate in the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I like it.
Were you ever at a point, George, where you thought like, I need 100 clients?
No, I was originally mentored by a very, very good coach, Rob Whitfield, Team LRF in the UK. Very well known in the UK, probably one of the best female coaches we have if we look at results-based approach. And he kind of heavily drilled it into me from day one that the quality of your service is everything. You know, the numbers you have there, it means you're earning more money, but if you're not providing good quality service, you're not going to retain those customers and they are going to leave you. And maybe that's not the goal with the client to keep them forever. But when we're thinking about competitive athletes, we're kind of, you know, moving on to the next goal after each goal is met, and you kind of want to be able to retain them as best as possible and build those relationships. So from early on, it was kind of drilled into me that the focus should be around the service you provide to a client and being the best you can as a coach, as opposed to trying to bring in the most amount of money. But a lot of people that started around the same point as me, and this is not going to be me trying to like blow my own trumpet or boast at all, but a lot of people that started at the same point of me have not progressed in the same timeline as what I have, even though they've gone with the telemarketing, advertising, push, want hundreds of clients, and they're still spinning their wheels doing the same thing. Whereas me being focused on just trying to be the best coach I can and educate myself and keep moving forwards to be that better person for my clients has led to me kind of progressing at a lot faster rate and moving up the rankings of who I get to work with and the kind of people that I'm now dealing with. So I think there's a good merit there for people that are up and coming, that focusing on the money will only leave you spinning your wheels doing the same thing.
What a paradox.
Yeah. I even just saw a parallel there.
It seems it should be the one. If you was you're starting out as someone who's looking to make this a career, you'd probably think like, hey, I need to earn X amount of money to be comfortable, pay my bills, whatever. And you can see how easily it is to become addicted into chasing the money and chasing the dollar for those materialistic things. But I think it shows more about your character as a person than it does you as a coach, more so than anything.
Yeah. What I was going to say, it drew parallels, and you just said it. You doubled down for me, George. You've just really sold it. Is that James Clear concept of goal focus versus process focus? Well, I say process. I can never remember, it's systems, isn't it?
Yeah, we've all read the book, Atomic Habits. So that's the author of the book, James Clear.
Yeah, so sales-focused individuals would be the goal-focused people. I want 100 clients. Therefore, every time they don't have 100, they fail. So they work further towards trying to get 100 clients. And the whole time they're forgetting about the process, which is being a coach. Yeah. Whereas you focus on the process and now they're there. So, man, that thing applies to a lot of shit.
That is a good book. Everyone should read Atomic Habits.
I've read it twice.
Have you
read it twice?
Yeah, I think I saw Nathan from Osteo, so surfing.
Oh,
Osteo.
Nathan Kelly. We had him on episode 3, I think it was. It was about pain.
And I think he put up I think it was Atomic Habits in his hand, and it was like, he said, 5th time reading this, get something new every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good book.
It is.
You really do. You really, really do. I think there's parts of it that apply to you certain points in your life, which is why I've picked it up a couple of times. I've just found gravitated towards it for that specific reason. I don't know what it was at the time, but eventually you come across and you go, that really applies to my life right now. I needed this. So it's like it's got its own subconscious pulling you in.
It does.
Well, I imagine he wrote it in blocks too, and there were parts where he's probably like, shit, this needs some work, and then he reread it and fixed that. So he would be the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I liked the idea that I think a lot of people think, it's just a little thing, it doesn't matter. But he made the point, I think it was like very early on in the book, maybe even before chapter 1, just in the intro, about an aeroplane going in a particular direction. If they're just 1 degree off over the space of like a 3-hour plane trip, something like that, they're going to end up in a totally different country just because of that 1 degree difference. Because over time it compounds. And I thought that was such a good metaphor for life.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was LAX, LA, California to New York. And if they changed the trajectory off the runway 1 degree, it went from New York to, I can't remember it was really right far up, like near Canada border.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
The difference in change, what you think is only small, compounds into such a huge difference later on.
Yeah, I love that book. So good. Now, the cherry on top of this podcast cupcake is a would you rather. Would you have one for George, or do I have one for George?
It's a boring. I've thought of one just now. It's a boring one. You can come up with a juicy one.
Oh, I don't know how juicy it is, the one I can think of on the spot, but I'm ready.
Would you rather?
Okay.
Not for you. This is for George.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Okay, I'm listening.
Have to prep once a year every year for the next 10 years, or never prep again.
Can he finish this current prep that he's doing? Or would he have to quit now, 6 weeks out?
That sucks. No, I'll say after this one.
Okay.
So he finishes this season, and then he's got to do a prep every year for the next 10 years.
So he has to compete every year for the next 10 years,
yep.
or never compete
or
again.
never compete again.
Realistically, the lifespan of a competitive bodybuilder could go into their mid-40s. So what I'm going to do is play the long haul here and take 10 years off and get absolutely huge and then compete when I'm old.
I like it.
No, wasn't it never compete again or compete every year for the next 10 years?
Oh, yeah, no, that was the...
I thought it was
you created a gem there. You said, I'm just going to get massive and compete later.
No, well, that still applies. I'm just going to get massive, focus on coaching and not compete again then, because competing every year would just be unfeasible from a works perspective, relationship perspective. It's just not feasible, man. I'm not one of those that seeks to get on stage every single year. It's more important.
At least you got to finish this prep, And that's a great segue too. You know what? It would be a great way for you to finish, George, because we're coming to your last comp this year. We booked our flights.
Yes, I'd be sick. I really wanted to see you guys for ages, trying to work out when we could get out to find you. That is the best news ever.
So
I didn't even set that up. I was just like, we've nearly forgotten to tell him.
We did. Before we pressed record, we told George that we have a surprise for him that his fiance knows about, that his coach Joe knows about, but we haven't told him yet. So that's the bomb.
Well, I better make sure I up my game then. Last show's the one where it matters.
At least that's what we're told, the 18th. So
we were actually going to surprise you and just like rock up the day before your comp to England. But now we're actually going to be in England a week before, and we're leaving the day after your comp. So it's just, we can't hide where we are for a whole week. So because
they're I'm repaying the favor that Rory, my client, came in to my show from Ireland when I was there. So I'm going to his show, and I thought you were going to be competing at the same show. I just assumed, like an idiot. You would compete on the same weekend, but just at a different show. So, so we're going to go to his show on the Sunday or the Saturday, and then we're going to come to your show the next week.
Nice, that'd be sick. No, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. That's just made it there. That's made my day.
And Zoe was saying,
if you surprised me, I think like a day out, if I'd seen you, I probably would have just been an emotional.
No, I would have just been in the crowd. I would have for sure just done it on the day.
Dean would have just flashed you from the stands.
Or I would have walked into your wherever you are in the night before carving up and just provided you with a packet of I've forgotten them because I haven't eaten them.
The Cracker Jacks? No.
The Cracker Jacks?
Cracker Jacks.
The camera ones.
Oh, the best ones. Oh, I found blueberry and vanilla.
Oh.
They are a contender. They're not quite the same sweet fix, but the flavors is equally as good.
Nice.
Okay, we'll have to look out for them. They do not have these in Portugal or Croatia.
Rice cakes suck in Portugal and Croatia. They're just plain and they're lame.
Well, supermarkets here, particularly Croatia, are much smaller. So if you want peanut butter, you have one choice. If you want barbecue sauce, you have one choice. If you want soft drinks, you've got like 3 choices.
Even the little's
Very
pretty scarce in Croatia.
They're all small. So we can't wait to come back to England, because when we were in England last time, we were there between January and like, I don't know, April or something like that. So it was winter and it was cold all the time. It was dark. And I've always said I want to go back to England in spring. So here we are, and we get to see George.
You've kind of missed, we had our like 5-minute heat wave this week. So you've kind of missed the only good bit of weather we actually have each year.
Well, I don't want it to be 40, man. It's already too hot here in Croatia at 35. She's tough.
It'll be nice in spring. I just want to do, because Dean was prepping when we were in England last time, so we couldn't like just have spontaneous days out. So I want to do that.
Yeah,
there's a lot more you can enjoy together that way.
Yeah.
So we'll see you. We'll have dinner with you the night of your comp. You down?
Yeah, perfect place. Because it's in St Albans, there's a place called Craft and Cleaver, which is just a big meat. It's like a barbecue place.
Happy day.
Great.
Yeah. I thought we were going to junk load at McDonald's the morning of his show.
Junk load.
Damn it.
Full cheesecake.
5 guys, half a die is our protocol.
Half? Come on now. 1 patty, 1 pill. That's another shirt.
Oh my God.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming on the show once again. It was great fun.
Always a pleasure, guys.
And we'll get you back on to talk about fatigue management for training, because we just spoke about it for nutrition this time.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah.